we go from that end to not exactly like say you say news, we say preview, but this is a fight that warrants a long preview. Like we talked about the first set of heavyweights, now we can talk about the second set of the heavyweight fights come into it. Next week, October 9th, MGM Grand. You have the third fight, the trilogy of Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. Obviously, the journey to this fight has been a weird one. They last fought probably the last major fight before the pandemic in the US. And then they either through legal proceedings or Tyson Fury getting COVID, this fight has been delayed in the points, but now it's fight week is finally here. It's finally here. Barring any something insane happening, we're not gonna have this fight in this area now. Neither man has fought since this. Neither man has fought since this, but looking at how each man has spent their time in what I think 17 months plus. Yeah, around 17 months plus since their second fight. How do you think both of these guys spend that time preparing for a fight, you know, that one side didn't want to have, and then the other one felt that they needed to have?
Well, you know, if you're judging just by the physical body, Wilder looks as muscular as I've ever seen him. So he's clearly been hitting the gym and staying in shape. With Fury, he's kind of doughy. We've seen him perform well looking doughy, so I don't know that that's going to judge his performance on fight night. But if you're just looking at their bodies, boy, you know, it sure looks like Wilder at least put the time in to make his body in good shape. And bigger. He looks bigger than he did before.
Francis, like that same question. Judging from what they've been doing last 17 months, how do you judge in both of these guys?
I agree with Joe. I think that Wilder looks extremely cut up and more bulky. There's definitely more muscle. He put on some muscle weight, and I'm sure it's because he wants to be prepared in the event that, you know, Fury uses the same strategy in their last fight. You know, doesn't want to be overwhelmed or just smothered by Fury and then can't create the distance, can't exchange with him well on the inside. So I believe he put on that muscle weight so that he could have more stability in the ring and not be pushed around as much. But I also think that, you know, he needs to be more effective with creating distance from Fury and then learning how to work the jab more effectively. Because the big issue with Fury was that he himself walked in a little bit bigger in the last fight. And Wilder was like a little bit confused as to how to handle his size. Fury was so imposing in the last fight, and it was just a stark contrast from their fight before that. So I think that he put on the size for those reasons. For Fury, I think that he's going to come in with the same strategy because it was effective the last time. And he does perform pretty well, even looking doughy, because he's such a good counterpuncher. I think he can get away with it. And he has such an unorthodox style as well. So, you know, why change it if it worked so well the last time? That's the way that I see it.
As if you could just judge them from the way they've done it in a few months, yeah, the first couple of months, Fury, yeah, he was living it up because he was seeing a big payday coming up, but he's lives it up. He has all the confidence in the world. Wilder, on the other hand, was just doing excuses when it came to how he lost, blaming the costume. Like I said, saying that Mark Breland either spiked his drink, called the fight off prematurely. That was like probably I think like the first 3 months.
That was terrible.
That was a Wilder post
Mentally,
fight.
he
So
handled that
mentally, it
loss
was
terribly.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
terrible. And I'm not so sure he would even have the mental capacity to come in to a fight this time. And then lose possibly, and then be mentally prepared for it. I don't think so.
Mhm.
Even with that comment he made about eating Fury's ass, that was super off-putting. It was like, why would you say that, dude? It's weird.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah,
it. But it's weird. I'm
Yeah.
certain no one else has said that in the history of the sport.
Well, no, we have had references to cannibalism. Mike Tyson does come up in the first thing,
That's true. That's true.
but those were like the first 3 months. And then I think after right that period where he linked up with Malik Scott. And ever since then, the only major thing you've seen from Wilder is just him train. And he's been training in his home in Tuscaloosa. Apparently, he's made his entire property into one big training camp. And obviously, it's him working on the mats, just been training, not going out, not partying as much. Granted, yeah, the pandemic made sure of a lot of that, but he's been focused. He's been training. He's been letting just the steam from those comments go off, die down a bit, and meanwhile, Fury, like we know, he's had the Joshua fight and his sights, negotiations back and forth. We pretty much made it a joke at a certain point, and then right on the cusp of him having it, the American justice system drops a hammer on him. And say what you want about Wilder when it comes to like his in-ring behavior, his outside the ring behavior, like he reacts to certain situations. He's not afraid to be very litigious in the courtroom. Like we've seen it in the Povetkin situation, where in his case he was getting ready to go, and then we all know what happened with Povetkin's test, and then the fight not happening. And now he had this similar situation. Contracted it, he was owed the third fight. He exercised the right to it. Fury's team tried to avoid it, make it seem like he didn't exist, and ultimately for an arbitrator to rule in Wilder's favor, which presents us to this. Now, since then, you haven't heard a lot of Wilder, which is actually a wise decision, because we know the immediate questions are going to come up. It's going to be that training camp, the excuses, the brilliant questions. So he's avoided a lot of that. He's let Malik Scott do a lot of the talking. Meanwhile, we had Fury make his camp into a COVID-19 super spreader event. And ultimately, we don't really know his situation. Last comment he had, and they said he's fine with one shot until after the Wilder fight, which I don't think he knows how these vaccines are working. Unless he got one in September, nobody knows what's going on with him in that front. And since you don't know if it's going on with him in that front, you don't know how he's going to be okay, because we've seen the track record of fighters that are coming back from COVID, especially when they come out very soon from it. They don't look as good as they used to before. But confidence-wise, I'm not going to take anything away from Fury. He is as confident as they come when it comes into this. And it came up a little bit in the press conference call, the Zoom call that Top Rank had last week regarding this. He's starting to laser in a little bit. I know they tried to, particularly the UK people that were in there, they would try to goad him into focus more on Joshua and Usyk, but he said like, no, I'm focusing on Wilder. Wilder is the most dangerous heavyweight right now. I'm focusing on him, but just saying the right thing. But that what worries me is that COVID thing. Like, how good is he going to look coming back from COVID? Especially not knowing like how fair you are after being vaccinated, and we know like you've kind of not had exactly the best behavior afterwards.
And he's a big guy, and we've seen that the COVID seems to hit heavier people worse than thinner people.
Which is going to be interesting to me seeing into it, because now we can focus a little bit on the tactics of the fight. I know you started, Francis, when you said Wilder had to get more distance between him and Fury, so Fury doesn't try to Klitschko him the way he did in the second fight. As far as laying on him, putting the weight on him, but in the same respect, he's in a situation where he has to get inside because he doesn't have the reach that Fury has.
Right. He just needs to be able to be more explosive in the inside. And I think because of Fury being able to smother him, he didn't really have those opportunities. But I also thought he was more lanky in that fight. And maybe he didn't really have the footwork to kind of spin out and attack from a different angle. I have a feeling that maybe he's going to incorporate more angles in this fight. And just not allowing Fury to like impose his size and dominate him so much and have his way with him in the ring. He needs to be able to explode on the inside, similar to some of the more explosive heavyweights that we've seen, and then kind of move out of the way and such. But I definitely think he needs to come in with a different strategy in terms of how he deals with Fury on the inside, because Fury is going to be ready to smother him like he did in the last fight. He was very successful with doing that the last time.
Yeah, that's the part that's tricky to me. They're like, Fury knows he cannot box him.
Mm-hmm.
Fury knows that he doesn't have to worry about getting into a technical fight with Wilder.
That's right.
But he also knows that Wilder can hurt him. Wilder can knock him down.
That's right.
And how he got up in the 12th round is still one of the things that people wonder about the most. How he got up from that shot. I think he literally, if he was off the ropes a little bit, he might not have gone up. But he knows that power is there. That's why he gives him the respect in that front. But what worries me about him going into it is with Wilder is it's obvious he's gained the weight, but is the weight coming more of the upper body? It have his legs gotten bigger as well? Because that's been the primary point of criticism when people just want to look at Deontay Wilder's physique. They see like, okay, strong guy, but chicken legs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so have his legs gotten a little bit strength in that area? Because if they have, then he could probably withstand that a little bit more. Because luckily he doesn't give height-wise, he doesn't give as much to Fury as, let's say, like an Usyk or an Andy Ruiz would. So in that sense, he could probably fare well, but he needs to me, he has to have a more varied attack. Because if you're Fury and all you have to worry about is make sure that his right hand doesn't land that well, you can toy with him like that all night.
Yeah, if that's all Fury has to worry about is just to watch the right hand, then it's going to be a long night for Wilder. I hope Wilder has, because he had a good hook that he was working on. If he can use that, boy, that would give Fury something else to worry about. But like you said, Dan, if Fury just has to worry about the right hand and that's it, Fury's going to be able to avoid it.
That's right.
And it's not only was the hook, he was learning a left uppercut. that was working fairly well. And he got away from it a little bit. I think the second or fight with Ortiz, like he reverted a bit, just relying more on his right hand because he was losing on those fighting those points. But right now, at the end of the day, you have a situation where, you had to have a more varied attack. And you have an opponent that has all the confidence in the world. And almost nothing has shaken off that confidence. We don't know if it'll change. We don't know if within the first 3 rounds we see the effects that COVID had on him. Because obviously we've had rumors. There's always been these rumors that Fury in this camp that he hasn't really looked that good. In this camp that he was getting hurt by young guys. And that was like post the COVID diagnosis. So we don't know if that's going to happen in that area. But overall, and it comes to this fight, when you see both of these guys coming into the ring, how do you ultimately see this faring out?
I'll let the lady go first.
Mm-hmm.
I see it playing out as it did in the last fight. I'd like to be more confident in Wilder changing up his strategy as other fighters have done it, but I'd say that it's far and few between and a rarity. So despite any new strategies that he plans on incorporating into this fight, I don't see him playing them out. I see him being, the same fighter that he was in the last fight, but a more bulked up version. And I see Fury just doing the same thing he did in the last fight and just kind of imposing his size, staying on the outside of the ring as well, really mixing up his strategy the way that he did in the last fight and outboxing Wilder. That's what I see. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that he's going to come in and really improvise to get the win this time, even though he says that he is. And also I see him getting very frustrated and very worried and very anxious in the event that things don't play out the way that he wants them to. I see that happening for Wilder, just because I don't think that he's in the mental state to be able to handle losing and improvising in a place where maybe he's not doing that well in the next fight. So that's what I see happening.
I see the same ultimate result with Fury winning, but I see it totally different.
Oh, really?
I don't think it's going to be. In the last fight, we saw Fury come out and be the aggressor, smother Wilder. I think this time Wilder, I think at this point in his life, I think he's going to come out and he's just going to be really, really aggressive. And he's just going to say, you know what? If I'm going out swinging. And I think he comes out really aggressive, looking to knock Fury's head off. And
like he did in the second fight.
Well, in the second fight, Fury came out and was really aggressive. Wilder wasn't so aggressive. And then he blamed it because on his 40-pound weight, the costume that he wore to the ring, they didn't have the legs. But Wilder was the one, more of the defensive one in the second fight. And Fury was the one who was coming forward, smothering. And that was surprising because Wilder's a big puncher. Fury said, "Oh, I'm gonna go in. I'm just gonna knock him out." And then when he did it, everyone was surprised. I think this time Wilder is gonna be. I don't think he's gonna wear some dumbass costume to the ring this time.
So we're gonna look for Wilder to come in with a bikini or less clothing for their for their next fight.
I hope not.
Not a 40-pound suit.
I think he comes out really aggressive, throws a lot of punches, and I think he starts winging right hands early, just trying to land one. And with the idea is hey, I only got to land one. And if I'm the aggressor and getting Fury to back up, maybe I'm going to be winning some rounds along the way.
Yeah, I have to agree with that because he did bust his eardrum in the last fight, right? So he was more offensive in the last fight and more explosive. I would say that would work again in their next fight. But yeah, I can't help but think that Wilder was mentally just not prepared for things not to go his way. So I could see him just feeling a sense of desperation in their next fight in the event that the same thing happens. So yeah.
What do you think, Dan?
The way I would put it to the way it's like this. The only chance that Wilder has of winning this fight is by knockout.
Yeah.
You can make any improvements that you can make on Emily Scott. He may look technically better, but he is not as skilled as Tyson Fury is. And that's partly because he came into boxing later. Fury didn't. And Fury learned how to be more skillful, didn't rely a lot when it came to his height. So he's got to learn that area. Deontay Wilder is not going to beat Tyson Fury in the technical fight. His only chance to win is by knockout. If the fight goes 12 rounds, you already know who's going to win. That is unless it's a situation where Wilder knocks him down 3 or more times. Because the first fight, it was pretty close. Those 2 knockdowns saved Wilder's championship. Because it made it a draw. And there are, unfortunately, times where Tyson Fury decides to take off rounds. Like I said, he has all the confidence in the world. He thinks he can take off rounds against somebody like Wilder. Until he learned that he really can't. So I predict that Tyson Fury will win. It could be a split decision because it is Vegas. But I would not be surprised either Wilder knocks him out. I would not be surprised one bit. And that is just going to throw, and it'll make the entire UK cry. I know that. It'll make the entire UK cry. Because of other things we could talk about later on. But he has a chance, but I don't think it'll happen, but he does have a chance. And so, like, barring anything crazy, that's what we're going to see, folks, next week. As I said, it's been heavyweight episode. Thank you for joining us. And definitely join us, like I said, either this Sunday or this Thursday or Sunday, as we'll talk about some other things because we focus on the heavyweights this time around. We're going to need to talk about this Triller situation. You guys are going to have to explain some legal stuff to me about how Triller has fucked this up so badly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. With the Lopez Cambosis fight.
Yeah.
Ugh, goodness.
Yeah. So, but we'll save that in for next episode. Like I said, thank you for joining us, folks. Everybody have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.